Right, so now I'm going to speak about some miscellaneous information with medications. The French Health Ministry reported that patients with COVID should not take ibuprofen or Motrin. This is not true. There is absolutely no evidence to that. The French Health Ministry has not been able to support that statement. So there's currently no scientific evidence to support not taking ibuprofen or Motrin. As a matter of fact, I'm going to say just the opposite. If you have a fever, you have body aches, you don't feel well, I suggest taking ibuprofen, Motrin over Tylenol, and I'll explain that shortly. Also, the American College of Cardiology, American Heart Association, and Heart Failure Society of America are urging patients not to stop taking their ACE inhibitors. Remember earlier I mentioned that the ACE inhibitors are the ACE receptors are the point that the COVID virus attaches in the lungs. 600,000 people die from heart disease a year. 15,000 in the United States. 15,000 people have died from COVID virus. Much better to take an ACE inhibitor as opposed to run the risk of getting COVID. The numbers greatly support health from this side as opposed to stopping your ACE inhibitor. Avoid Tylenol and acetaminophen as it decreases the body's antioxidants. This is why I'm saying to take this instead of, taking Motrin instead of the Tylenol or acetaminophen. It's called paracetamol if you're in Europe. And the reason is your acetaminophen, your Tylenol, your paracetamol is broken down in the body and needs to consume substrate or a precursor in the body that's called NAC, NAC, or N-acetylcysteine. N-acetylcysteine is the precursor for glutathione. Glutathione is the body's primary free radical scavenger. Your lungs are constantly being assaulted by toxins, viruses, parasites, irritants that are in the air. So your lungs are in damage all the time. That generates free radicals, and then you need your glutathione to help repair, remove the irritants, reduce the inflammation. So if you're taking a lot of Tylenol, you're consuming your NAC, so the NAC's not available to make glutathione, then you run the risk of having that cytokine storm, having decreased lung function. Here's an article from the Journal of Pediatrics saying that acetaminophen is associated with asthma development. So if you're giving your child a lot of acetaminophen, Tylenol, and they're getting a lot of colds, they're breathing in these toxins that are in the air, the pollutants, the irritants, you're more likely to have asthma. So the metabolism of acetaminophen provides a biologically plausible explanation for causation, the depletion in airway mucosal glutathione that could contribute to vulnerability to oxidant stress. So you want to avoid Tylenol. I don't tell my parents to give their children Tylenol. I make sure that they give Motrin. The only time I give Tylenol over Motrin is if there's a kidney issue, if there's a concern for dehydration, which could affect the kidneys, or there's some GI issues that I'm worried about Motrin causing some additional irritation to the GI. Otherwise, it's always Motrin to me. We also want to avoid some certain other medications because they'll affect the digestion and absorption of nutrients. Specifically, this is proton pump inhibitors and H2 blockers. So this will include your Prevacid, your Pepcid, your Zantac. The problem is we make acid in our stomach. That helps break down the food in our stomach. We need that acid to activate our pancreatic enzymes. Our pancreatic enzymes help us digest fats, carbohydrates, proteins. If we don't have high levels of acid in our stomach, then we don't activate our pancreatic enzymes correctly, so we're not digesting our foods appropriately, which means we can't absorb the nutrients appropriately, which means inside of us we are deficient in vitamins and minerals and nutrients, which then make you vulnerable to illness because now you're stressing your body out because you don't have enough substrates, you don't have enough elements to make the things that you need to stay healthy. So that's why if you're on proton pump inhibitors, H2 blockers, and also the older you get, the less stomach acid you make. This is probably why the elderly are more affected if they don't have other conditions, is because they're not making as much acid. Starting at 40, you start to make less acid in your stomach. So even if you're not on a PPI or an H2 blocker, just age alone will contribute to decreased acid, decreased activation of the pancreatic enzymes, decreased absorption, decreased digestion. So here is an article showing that proton pump inhibitors and the risk of vitamin and mineral deficiency, and it says that PPIs have been associated with an increased risk of vitamin and mineral deficiencies impacting vitamin B12, vitamin C, calcium, iron, and magnesium metabolism. So what I recommend, starting 40 up, if you're having some acid issues, digestion, absorption issues, is if you can, you stop your PPIs, you stop your H2 blockers, and you start to take betaine hydrochloric acid. Betaine hydrochloric acid is acidic. So when you take it, it provides the acid that your stomach needs. What it does is it turns down the acid production from you, because you're taking it from outside the body, helps you digest the food appropriately. You take this with each meal, and then hopefully you can get off the PPI or the H2 blocker. Something else that you may want to add on is a digestive enzyme. These are the pancreatic enzymes that help you digest the carbohydrates, the protein, and the fats. I prefer betaine hydrochloric acid over digestive enzymes because I want the pancreas to do what it needs to do, and I like to just add some acid to the stomach. So that's my preference, but some people need both. Something to talk to your physician about if this is a situation that might meet one of your needs. So what can you do now to protect yourself and your family? The popular idea in immunology right now is that we're born with our genetics, and that controls how susceptible we are to illnesses and how one's immune system responds to an illness. This is a very static model. It's an antiquated model, but this is kind of what the public generally believes, and this is what you kind of hear in the mainstream press, is you're just kind of born with your genetics, and there you go. Medicine, science has moved far beyond that. We understand that you're born with your genetics, but the way you live your life can alter how your genetics is expressed. But before I get into that, there's the idea that you can, what they go on to say in mainstream medicine, mainstream literature, is that the idea that one can boost their immune system and ward off illness by using daily supplements, including vitamin C, D, and zinc, is often touted by the health food and vitamin advocates, but there's no research to support that yet. I disagree with this statement. As I've already said, the H2 blockers, the PPIs will alter how you digest food, how you absorb food. That's going to contribute to this. When they do these studies, they'll just take a random population of people. Large percentage of that population may not have a problem with digestion absorption. They may eat really well. That would alter the results of a study looking to see if vitamins and minerals contribute. I believe that if they were just to take a population like the elderly that are on PPIs or H2 blockers and looked at this, they would find that there is a deficiency in vitamins and minerals. As a matter of fact, the FDA did a study about 15 years ago looking at nutrient levels of vitamins and minerals in the American population, and what they found was 50% of the population was deficient in certain key vitamins and minerals. So there's some conflicting evidence out there. My opinion is that the FDA was correct. People are deficient, and this kind of mass understanding, mass-produced information that vitamins and minerals do nothing for us is absolutely wrong. So as I said, the epigenetics, which is we're born with a certain genetic profile, but we can alter how those genetics are expressed based on how we live our life, how we eat, how we sleep, how we hydrate, how we eliminate, how we exercise, if we meditate, what kind of relationships we have with other people. Basically, all the personalizing lifestyle factors that we engage in on a daily basis will alter how our genes are affected. You can look at two identical twins, and if one's had a hard life, one's had an easier life, one has an addiction, one eats really healthy, you can see physically that they're very different people, and that they have the same genetics, especially if they're identical twins, but the environment that they surround themselves with will alter how their genetics is expressed, and that's called the phenotypic expression. So these are some of the influences on how our genes are expressed, and under environmental factors, I will include nutrition. So here is an article from the National Institutes of Health. There's a link, and it says respiratory illnesses are linked to epigenetic mechanisms. Known drivers behind epigenetic processes include basic nutrition. So to me, as I look at who's getting sick from the coronavirus and who is not, I am drawing the line between those that are healthy, that have adequate nutrition, and live a very healthy lifestyle versus those who do not. So somebody might look physically healthy. So you might look at somebody and say, oh, well, they're really healthy. But you don't know if they're vaping. You don't know how many drinks they're taking a night. You don't know if they're on PPIs. You don't know the proton pump inhibitors. You don't know if they're on an H2 blocker. You don't know what medications they're on. You don't know all of these medical issues that might be underlying, that they might look healthy, but they're actually not healthy because they're not getting the appropriate vitamins and minerals, and they're not boosting their immune system. Remember, go back to the cabin with the kids versus school with the kids, the environment that they're surrounding themselves with and the immune system that's existing as a result of the environment that they're in. So this is why I believe some people are getting sick and some people are not getting sick. So everyone should eat organic and fresh and exercise, sleep, hydrate, laugh a lot, because this is what's going to keep you healthy. Now, as I get into the different vitamins and minerals I recommend, I want to make sure that I'm very clear that this has not been approved by the FDA. I don't want anybody breathing down my neck. I don't want to hear that I am pushing things that are not FDA approved. If that is what you need, FDA approval. I mean, a lot of things are used off FDA approval in mainstream medicine, but I just don't want to get into anybody's crosshairs. So make sure that you check with your personal physician. This is what I do with my patients. I have a very healthy practice. Patients stay with me because they see that they get off their medications. They see that their kids are sick less often. I'm a concierge physician, so people pay a premium to come into my practice, and they wouldn't be paying a premium if they didn't see that their kids were healthier and that their kids were getting off their medications. So I believe the proof's in the pudding, because people aren't going to spend their hard-earned dollars to come into my practice if this was not true and this was not working. So these are the different vitamins and minerals I'm going to go through. There's different functions to these vitamins and minerals. Antioxidant function, I mentioned that briefly with the glutathione. There's also alpha lipoic acid and vitamin C. They both help with antioxidant function. Then we can boost the immune system, and we're going to do that with probiotics, vitamin A, vitamin D, and zinc. And then I have some miscellaneous that also modulate the immune system, which are fish oil. The multivitamin is just going to make sure that you are getting all the nutrients you need and the micronutrients you need. I eat really well, but I certainly know I don't get enough healthy nutrients, because if you look at the soil, mass farming, our soil's been depleted of nutrients because we don't rotate the crops like we used to historically. We just hit it with fertilizer, we grow it, and then it looks like a tomato, but nutritionally it's nothing like the tomato that our grandparents used to eat. So our soil's been depleted, so you might be eating healthy, but the nutrient content that's in the vitamins, that's in the produce that we're eating, is nothing near what our grandparents used to receive. And then last is dandelion tea. Dandelion tea, something you can sip on all day. It has, I'll get into that in a moment. So the benefits of alpha lipoic acid is it's an antioxidant, it's neuroprotective, it helps against heart disease, and then you can see the others here. This is the dosing on each of these supplements. I am going to go through maintenance, which is what you should be taking right now, if you're not sick, and then if you do get sick with the COVID virus. I distinguish between adults and children because children are not little adults in terms of their metabolism. They're very different. Unfortunately, medicines are not, for the most part, studied to note the differences between child metabolism and adult metabolism. The pharmaceutical companies generally just say, well, this is what we do for an adult, so we're just going to decrease the dose for kids. So the American Academy of Pediatrics is a strong advocate to get more research for pediatrics. So this is what I found works for my practice. You can just take a screenshot of this. I'm not going to go through every dosing, but you can see that there is a difference between if you're healthy versus being sick with COVID virus. Next is dandelion tea. It's going to help with digestion, which helps absorption. It's going to reduce inflammation. It helps prevent onset of chronic diseases, helps clean out the liver. Your liver is what helps detoxify you, and if you're getting sick, you want to make sure that your detoxifying organ is very healthy so you can help get rid of the dangerous metabolites that are coming through as you fight your disease. And then your daily 2 cups of tea. If you're infected, 4 cups of tea. You also want to make sure that your dandelion tea is organic, because if it's been sprayed with pesticides, those pesticides are still on the tea, so you want to go organic on this. The benefits of fish oil are it boosts the immune system, and it prevents heart disease, activates metabolism. So fish oil, maintenance and infected, either way, we're going to do 5,000 milligrams a day for an adult and 500 to 3,000 milligrams for a child. The broad range between 500 to 3,000 milligrams for a child depends on how old they are. I start 500 milligrams with a 6-month-old. I increase it to 1,000 milligrams at a year old. I go to 1,500 milligrams, 4 years old. 8 years old, I go to 2,000. At 12, I go to 2,500. And then when they're 15, 16, I go to 3,000. And when they're adults, I go to 5,000. Glutathione, I've already mentioned, because that's what Tylenol prevents the production of. If you're taking a lot of Tylenol and you don't have enough NAC in your system, glutathione helps you break down nutrients. It regulates your immune response, and it protects against oxidative stress. I want to emphasize that you want to get S-acetylglutathione. There's other forms you can take, such as IV, but most people don't have access to an IV form of glutathione. But you want to make sure that you're taking an S-acetylglutathione form. Otherwise, you'll digest it and it won't have any benefit in the body. So you want to make you want to take this type. You can see the dosing for adults and kids. If you get infected, you really boost it up, because at that point your body is under attack, and you want to make sure that you have plenty of an antioxidant in your system. And remember, glutathione is your body's primary free radical scavenger. It's your primary antioxidant in your body. These are things that can deplete the glutathione in your body. I've already mentioned the acetaminophen. There's other drugs that can do it, but I think for most people, you want to pay attention to the smoking, alcohol, and caffeine. Remember, I said you could look healthy, but if you're consuming a lot of these, which people do on a daily basis, and a lot of it, you can reduce your glutathione, which then just sets you up for having a worse COVID or any kind of infection. Probiotics do a lot. Here we can see it helps make vitamins, helps absorb vitamins, it protects against diseases, infections, it helps with your function of your GI tract, your immune function, it helps modulate your immune system, it helps make vitamin minerals. So probiotics do a lot. The food that you eat will determine the kind of probiotics or the kind of bacteria that live in your gut. The bacteria that live in your gut are the probiotics. Now, you can have bad bacteria, so if you're eating a lot of junk food, the bacteria that live in your gut, you're feeding that population, they're the ones that are going to live. Those bacteria actually make you crave the bad food. You start eating good food, then at first you're going to feel a little wonky, you're not going to feel great, because the bacteria that live in your gut, which are the unhealthy bacteria, you're going to say, what are you doing to me? You're starving me. You're going to feel not so good. But once you start consuming healthy foods, you're going to start fertilizing good bacteria, and then you'll start craving healthy foods, and you're not going to want the bad foods. So probiotics, especially these two, the Lactobacillus gasseri, they repress the activation of purine, and purine is an energy source for coronavirus. So if we're taking away the energy source for coronavirus by consuming the Lactobacillus gasseri, we're less likely to give the food source to the coronavirus. So if you don't have food, you don't have an energy source, you're not going to grow as well. And the other is the Lactobacillus rhamnosus, which has the same binding sites as the COVID virus. So then we get into a competitive inhibition. So two things are fighting for a site as opposed to just the COVID virus, and then you're less likely to get a progression of the disease. That's why probiotics are important. Here's the dosing. Doesn't significantly change, 1 to 2 tablets, depending if it's maintenance or if you're in active infection. Vitamin A strengthens the immune system, helps prevent cancer and heart disease, and those are the important points with COVID. I want to emphasize that we don't take beta-carotene vitamin A, we take retinol vitamin A. You can see the dosing here. Again, it depends on the age for the vitamin A, and again, the dosing infected. Vitamin A is fat soluble, vitamin C is water soluble, so if you take a lot of C, you can just pee out what you need. D and A are not water soluble, they just don't pee out if you take too much. So that's why we do a limitation on the infected site. That's why we take these high doses just for 3 days, but then we go back to, on the 4th day, we go back to taking your maintenance dose. Benefits of vitamin C: treats colds, boosts the immune system, combats cancer, helps prevent hypertension, stroke. And here's the dosing. Remember, mainstream medicine, Harvard was recommending high dose IV vitamin C to treat COVID virus. Here's a way to do it orally, because not everybody has access to IV vitamin C. And you can see what I want to emphasize here is if you get COVID, you take 1,000 milligrams every hour to bowel tolerance. That means once you start to feel abdominal pain, you back off and then once the abdominal pain goes away, then you start it again until abdominal pain starts again. So you're just keep walking that line up to the point that you have the abdominal pain, then you back off, and then you walk towards it again. And that way you can get your high dose vitamin C by just taking it orally. Benefits of vitamin D is supports the immune system, helps support a healthy nervous system, reduces the risk of flu, virus, COVID, virus. Here's the dosing. I've actually broken it out based on weight if once you're infected, but here's the daily weight again. It goes with the amount of, or the age of the child, and you just take a screenshot of that. Zinc, the last one I'm going to talk about, it helps fight against cancer, it helps heal chronic and fungal infections, it boosts the immune system and energy levels. Here's the dosing for zinc. Now zinc is, has it's an element that has a 2+ charge to it, so it's getting in some chemistry. Copper has a 2+ charge, so that's why you have to balance out zinc and copper. So you just don't want to take a ton of zinc and not pay attention to how that's working with other minerals that you could be taking. So just want to make sure that as you do this, you just don't overload on zinc, but that you're balancing it with the copper, and it should be in a 15-to-1 ratio. What you can see here, OS means oxidative stress, and you can see how the vitamins and minerals that I've been talking about reduce the oxidative stress. That's why I had the flat marks. And then by cigarette smoking, air pollutants